Seen anything suspicious tonight?
Suspicious? Like what?
Irrational citizens talking about supernatural beings and places.
Irrational citizens?
There's no evidence for the existence of the supernatural. Therefore, anyone who believes in God, miracles, or an afterlife is a danger to our society.
Are you certain there's no evidence?
If there is, I haven't heard of it.
Space and time came into existence out of nothing, 13.7 billion years ago, in an event known as the Big Bang. Then about 4.5 billion years ago, life suddenly arose on Earth. The sudden creation of our finely tuned, life-permitting universe, and then the appearance of the first genetic information are such unlikely events that they point to the existence of a creator.
However unlikely it was for our universe to come into existence, and for life to arise out of inorganic matter, it happened, and you don't need God to explain why things are the way they are. Our universe is probably one of an infinite number of bubble universes, constantly popping out of some sort of quantum foam. And life arose when amino acids in the early Earth's oceans randomly came together to form the first self-replicating strand of genetic information. From there, that first strand of genetic information copied itself again and again. During this process, random copying errors made some of the new strands of information better able to survive and reproduce. That's how evolution works.
To assume that even the simplest strand of self-replicating genetic code formed without the intervention of an outside intelligence is irrational. DNA is the most complex digital code we know of. Computer software code isn't created randomly. Adding random copying errors to an existing computer code doesn't increase its functionality. It decreases it until the program simply stops working. If programmers design computer programs, and DNA most closely resembles a computer code, doesn't it seem probable that DNA was designed by an intelligent agent of some sort?
Admit that DNA appears to be designed, but that doesn't mean it was designed by God. Maybe it was designed by aliens, who are so technologically advanced that they may as well be gods.
What's more probable, the idea that aliens designed DNA, or the idea that an immaterial, eternal, supernatural intelligence designed DNA? To assume that another temporal being or beings created our genetic code simply pushes the question back a step. Because unless these aliens you speak of are eternal, you have to explain where they came from and why they began to exist. God is by definition an uncaused, spaceless, timeless, eternal mind, and is therefore the only candidate capable of bringing space and time into being at the moment of the Big Bang. God bringing the universe into being and then creating life on Earth is a much simpler explanation than the assertion that our universe just popped out of nothing without a cause, or that life naturally developed out of non-life. Even if amino acids randomly formed and assembled themselves into the first strand of DNA, you would still need the molecular protein machinery to copy that strand of DNA in order for natural selection to begin. Given these facts, how do you conclude that God is a less probable explanation for the origin of life in the universe than unguided mutation and chance?
It doesn't matter how probable God is. There's just no evidence for such a being.
The origin of the universe and the origin of life are two events that point to a cause outside of the physical, natural world. What kind of evidence would it take to convince you that God's existence is a reasonable explanation for these events? Digital codes are written by programmers, intelligent agents. Why then wouldn't you infer that DNA, a digital code, was also written by an intelligent agent? If there are no scientific tests for randomness, we have no reason to assert that a universe wasn't created with intelligent life in mind, or that the origin and evolution of life were unguided natural events. Logic doesn't allow us to prove negative statements. It's therefore irrational to claim that something is undesigned simply because we don't know who designed it. This is an antique pocket watch. People once used mechanical devices such as this one to tell time. Each of its many parts were designed, manufactured, and fit together in order to move the second, minute, and hour hands at a consistent speed throughout the day. If you found this watch buried in the dirt outside the city, You wouldn't conclude that such a complex array of gears and springs could form and then come together through some unguided process. You would assume that this was designed by a thinking being, even if you've never met the designer of this watch, until you can demonstrate how its parts were made and assembled without an intelligent agent. It's more reasonable to infer that a thinking being played a role in its creation. If our universe, with all of its finely tuned physical laws, is far more complex than a pocket watch, why wouldn't you assume that the universe was designed? And if DNA, the code found in all life, is more complex than any computer code, why would you assume that it wasn't ordered by an intelligence? God is the only uncaused cause, capable of deciding when and how to create our universe. So, if science can't prove negative statements, what evidence do you have that our universe is the result of some random, unguided event, or that the origin of life was an unplanned accident?
I can't think of any evidence right now, but that doesn't mean there isn't any. Nor does it mean that God brought life and the universe into existence.
So what is it that prevents you from even considering that this world was created with you and I in mind?
I just don't like the idea of some supernatural dictator telling me what's right and wrong.
Your skewed view of God isn't an issue of scientific inquiry or logic. If an eternal immaterial mind is the best explanation for the universe and life, it doesn't matter if you like it. Your personal preferences have no bearing on what's real and what's illusory. If the truth is actually important to you, you'd better reassess the evidence and ask yourself, if life in the universe appear designed, is it reasonable to assume that they are?
This the one you buzzed about? Yes, this is the one.
Think about it. Are you weighing the evidence? Or are you closed to the possibility of a supernatural designer because you don't like the idea of God?